Sukuna of Jujutsu Tech was the last fight in Jujutsu Kaisen, with our main cast needing to throw everything they had and more to take down the King of Curses. So how were they able to? Well, in this video, we'll be breaking down, with hindsight, the first plan to take down Sukuna. The fight begins with Yuji and Higuruma jumping down to prepare for the fight, as Mei launches several crows at Sukuna to catch his attention. And this is where we'll mark our first performance of Shinjuku Showdown, this being Momo's. And if you're wondering what she did, well, she's right there. And that's it. Yep, that is all she did. Straight F. Back to the fight. Higuruma slams his hammer down, raising rumble into the air, and Yuji moves in, crushing the rumble and turning into dust to blind Sukuna. While Higuruma wraps his hand up in his cursed tool, allowing Yuji to land his punch straight to his gut, which Sukuna blocks, yet he seemingly still felt its impact somehow. This was our first hint about Yuji's new soul tracking ability, which we've gotten hints about since his first fight with Mahito. With Sukuna distracted by Yuji's new ability, Higuruma opens his domain, Deadly Sentencing, where they have a retrial of the case against Yuji Itadori on the charges of mass murder in Shibuya. But before we can see the trial, we cut to Hikari vs Urarame, which starts out with Urarame freezing Hikari's right arm and moving in to shatter it. However, Hikari has the jackpot in effect, so he heals his arm, grabbing their face and slamming them down a building. Urarame slides out of his grasp and chucks some ice at Hikari's side, cutting him open. Hikari is in the heat, and he heals through the pain, landing a kick straight into Urame's gut. Quick to recover though, they start to freeze his leg. Hikari's still under the jackpot effect though, so he just kicks Urarame in the head and through several buildings with his other leg. As they both recover from their injuries, the next round of the fight begins, and we fade back to Yuji's team, who are in the middle of the trial against Sukuna, who shockingly just admits to being guilty instead of trying to fight the legal system. He states that it is because he has a desire to see Higuruma's executioner blade with his own eyes. This sword being the result of Higuruma giving someone the death penalty, and it having the ability to kill anyone in one slash. And as the domain opens, Kusakabe and Ino move in to join the fight as well. But there was something they did not account for. See, going into this, they were going to get Sukuna's technique confiscated by the domain when he was proven guilty. But little did they know, Sukuna had a cursed tool when he entered the domain, so instead of removing his technique, it stole the cursed tools. Luckily, Kusakabe realized this as well and dove in to save Higuruma from Sukuna's slashes. Then he proceeded to open his simple domain to protect Akuma from the incoming Sukuna. The next to react was Choso, who fired off a piercing blood, but Sukuna outpaced it and double donuted him straight through the chest. Yuji came in to save his brother, and using this opening, Ino throws Nanami's cleave at him, who parried it with ease, but Ino grabbed it, came down, hitting a critical ratio right on Sukuna's arm, who kicked him back to recover from the blow. Kusakabe, Yuji, and Higuruma then run in seeing Sukuna is currently open, and each strike from the other side, hoping to get an opening for Higuruma. But Sukuna dodges it, decking Higuruma in the face a few times, and then throwing him with full force. Yuji tries to catch up to him, though he's quickly surpassed by Sukuna, who throws several slashes at Higuruma to finish him off. But right before they make contact, Higuruma evolves and unlocks Domain Amplification, which if you don't know is the technique that nullifies other sorcerers' techniques, but the user can't use their own while it's active. Luckily, the Executioner's sword is a cursed tool and not a technique, so it can still be in use. Sukuna seeing this is filled with joy and declares Higuruma's full name, which is a praise few have earned. As he destroys the building they're standing in with this mantle, Yuji arrives into the battle at the same time, jumping through the rubble to help out Higuruma. Sukuna throws 2 chunks of concrete at Higuruma and splits them into dust, blinding him and moving in to get a punch off, but Yuji comes in to counter. However, with virtually no enthusiasm, Sukuna grabs him, cuts open his side completely, and as he drops him, once again restates that he has absolutely no interest in Yuji whatsoever. Which is like, come on, man, give him some credit. He's trying here for once. Higuruma runs in and rushes him with a barrage of stabs, but Sukuna weaves them all and decks him in the face, moving behind him. Higuruma tries to slash Sukuna's head off, though Sukuna had already created enough distance between them that he could safely shoot off a world-cutting slash that cuts Higuruma's arm clean off. As he approaches the hunched-over Higuruma, he asks him to unlock RCT and heal his wounds, which is all kinds of sadistic, and when he doesn't, he cuts off his other arm. But before he can deliver the killing blow, Choso shoots off a piercing blood which catches Sukuna's attention, just long enough for Higuruma to unlock RCT at death's door, similar to Gojo, and stabbed Sukuna straight through his hand. But he was just too slow, and Sukuna had already cut off his hand, rendering his stab completely useless, and he cuts open Higuruma's chest. But not a moment too late, Yuji returns to the battlefield and Higuruma tosses him the fading executioner's sword. Yuji goes for the hit and it seems to land, but it was too late. Higuruma was already unconscious and as the result, his sword was rendered useless. So let's rate Higuruma's performance. Although the plan didn't work out due to unknown circumstances, he was able to unlock 2 different sorceries to make up for this, which some special grades don't even have these abilities. Ghetto. So I think it's safe to say he's an A. Let's get back to the battle. As Yuji recovers from the potential loss of his friend, Sukuna moves in to take advantage of the state with the double high punch, which Yuji blocks high, so Sukuna moves in low with a kick, sending him flying and finishing off the combo with a few dismantles straight to Yuji's chest. As Sukuna approaches Yuji, he notices Wee Wee and Kiara coming in to take Higuruma's corpse away, just like they did for Gojo. He also sees that Yuji was able to recover from his injuries with his newly unlocked RCT, which Sukuna thinks should please him since above all else he loves a good fight, but it only seems to annoy him. He comes to the conclusion that the reason he despises Yuji so much is that even though he deems him so much weaker than him, Yuji's resolve is virtually unbreakable. So he states that he'll do 3 things. First, destroy Yuji's resolve. Second, kill every Calling Games player. And finally, start the merger to end it all. And as he finishes making the statement, Yuta arrives, coming in and summoning Rika, who slams the king down, beginning the next stage of the fight. The fight starts where we left off from, with Yuta and Sukuna facing off after a small exchange. The fight begins with Yuta dashing towards Sukuna and using Rika to hide a quick stab to the chest. However, this is where we're going to see the gap between these two, with Sukuna easily seeing through this obvious plan and grabbing the blade. This was only a diversion though. Yuta lets go of the blade while Rika charges in, having her distract him so he can get a shot off on the chest. Then he grabs the blade again, aiming for the head. He ducks though as Rika charges in. While he's using everything he can, Sukuna grabs some scrap metal and tosses it at Rika, using another piece to block Yuta's sword swing. Instead of moving in to continue pressing Sukuna though, he does one of the most hype moments in Shinjuku Showdown and opens his domain. Authentic Mutual Love. Which, let me say, I love this character, but that name is not it. Like Jogo's domain is named Coffin of the Iron Mountain. How can you let Jogo have a tougher name than you? But I do agree it is completely in character name for him and it matches up with his character nicely. Now what does it do? Well, each of the swords in the domain represents a cursed technique Yuta has stolen. So every time he grabs a sword, he gets to use the technique engraved into it 1 time. To counter this, Sukuna opens Hollow Wicker Basket. Think of it like an ancient version of Simple Domain, a counter to those trapped in domains to protect against the sure hit effect. Yuta makes the first move, grabbing a sword and hitting Sukuna in the face with a thin icebreaker, which is a technique used by Takako. Think of it as a critical hit of concussive force. The camera then pans to Yuji, and Sukuna reveals the plan in this part of the fight. Using Yuji's new soul tracking hits and Yuji's domain, they'll free Megumi from Sukuna's grasp and end it all in this domain. Starting off the next round, Yuji charges into close quarters, his specialty, and lands 2 jabs on Sukuna's left as Yuta grabs another sword which contains the technique of Dohou in it, which places an invaluable barrier on a Shikigami's trajectory. So in layman's turn, it puts a sure hit effect on a Shikigami's attack, which is why even though Sukuna dodged Rika's attack, it still hit. Yuta then proceeds to grab another sword and using sky manipulation technique, changing the world around him like a sheet of paper. Rika then picks up Yuji, tossing him like a football straight at Sukuna, while Yuta shifts the sky, allowing himself to zoom to the ground, and they both hit opposing sides of Sukuna. With Yuji putting his arm at a lock once again here, we're going to see Sukuna's experience in combat by quickly flipping over his hand and activating his curse technique to cut Yuji open. Yuta was fast to react as well, grabbing his sword which contained cursed speech, a technique that makes your opponents do whatever you tell them to. He shouts to not move as he grabs another sword, hitting Sukuna with a second thin icebreaker as Rika slams him from the left. He crashes into the ground with Yuji and Yuta running in while his defense is down, but Sukuna had already recovered and sent some slashes at them to halt their approach. Rika moved in too to keep up the pressure, but got her face palmed and kicked in the gut, as Sukuna uses Dismantle on her face while he still has her palmed. And as Yuji and Yuta heal from their wounds, round 3 begins. All 3 charge in, Yuji goes in for the right with Rika going for the left, and Yuta charging straight into the middle to stab the chest. However, the sword he had picked for this attack had a cursed technique Clairvoyance, which if the ink of the user's weapon is marked on the opponent, they can briefly see in the future. With Yuta dodging Sukuna's counter and landing a hard right jab on his face, and Yuji and Rika using this opening to continue the combo. Yuji hits a double palm strike straight to the chest, and Rika hits a hammer blow straight to Sukuna's back. As Sukuna pushes Yuji back, Yuta finds the perfect opening, grabbing two swords, the first having sky manipulation, which he uses to pull himself forward, and the second containing shrine, which he lands directly on Sukuna's face. Now, this moment right here was a setup for another backup plan against Sukuna, which we will come back to in a later part of the series. So just keep in mind how weird it is that Yuta actually explained what their plan was instead of keeping it secret to have some sort of advantage of Sukuna guessing how his technique works. Not missing a beat though, Yuji comes in, punching Sukuna straight in the face as Yuji palms him in the gut. Yuji then knees him in the face, but Sukuna grabs his back and goes for the gut, which seems to be his favorite thing to do to Yuji for some reason. But this time Yuji powers through the pain and spits in Sukuna's face, and Yuta comes in with a clean uppercut straight to Sukuna's jaw. Also seizing the moment, Rika grabs Sukuna's leg, throwing him to Yuji, who lands a Majin kick. Now being backed in the corner, Sukuna starts to set up for a world-cutting slash. But this is the exact moment they had been planning for the entire fight. The moment he released Hollow Wicker Basket. All three of them charged in. First was Yuji and Rika suspending his arms as Yuta ripped out his weird mouth, gut, tongue thing. To push him back, Sukuna lands a slash, but Yuta runs back in, cutting his mouth open as he's bombarded by slashes over and over again. Just when he seems to have held Yuta back, Yuji's blood, which he spat on his face before, explodes. Blood exploding. Noticing. With him being blind once more, Yuta cuts off his lower left arm. As Yuta grabs another sword, Yuji runs back as Yuta sets up a maximum output Jacob's ladder on Sukuna, which is even more damaging due to him being a partial cursed spirit. And then to end this, Yuji runs back in and hits Sukuna with one more soul punch, telling Megumi directly to wake up. However, there was one thing they did not account for. For the person they wanted to save, didn't want to be saved. With Megumi not having the will to gain control back, the controller falls back to Sukuna. As we hear those terrifying chants once more, as Yuta is cut clean in half. When all seems to be lost though, someone appears. Someone Sukuna wasn't able to track. Stabbing Sukuna straight through the back, Maki Zenin has joined the fight. And this is where we'll end it for today. Maki and Sukuna's fight begins with Rika carrying away the injured Yuta, and Maki keeping him in place with her sword still firmly planted through his chest. Wee then comes in, taking away the injured Yuta to see if he can be healed by Shoko. Sukuna is then able to dash out of Maki's sword, with Yuji attempting to move in with Maki, but his injuries from his fight with Sukuna were still not fully healed, so he stumbles back, coughing up blood, putting him out for this part of the fight. Maki and Sukuna dash through the street, each moving as fast as they can. Sukuna throws a slash, but Maki's too fast and moves in to attack Sukuna. She swings for the chest, but he jumps over it. Maki then recovers, swinging upwards, but she was too slow. Sukuna grabs it. Another move he seems to like doing a lot for some reason. But Maki's strength isn't to be taken lightly as she flips him over, winning in a contest of strength. And cuts Sukuna clean across the chest, sending him flying backwards into a bridge, which he uses spiderweb on, turning the entire thing into rubble. He then uses it as cover to send off a world-cutting slash, which he was able to dodge as they face off and round 1 comes to a close. The next round starts with Maki moving in, with her parrying a slash that cuts straight through the building behind them. They both clash as the building falls on them, having Maki move back while Sukuna charges forward, using a card to surprise Maki with a slash to the chest, returning the favor from previously in their fight. Sukuna runs ahead of her and through the whole building. And question, did he just take the stairs? Because we didn't see him make a hole or entrance or anything. Is it safe to assume he just walked through the front door, walked up several flights of stairs, just to hit her with a cleave straight to the chest? The others show up to lend a hand, with Ino using drill while Sukuna is off guard, notices him, and shoots off several dismantles at him, which he tanks, so Sukuna kicks him in the gut and out the window. However, he notices that Ino didn't have Nanami's cleave anymore, which is where Kusakabe comes in, hitting him in the arm with a ratio, knocking him down a few levels. But he jumps back up, slamming him to the wall, though before he can continue doing anything, with perfect timing, Maki comes back into the fight, kicking Sukuna down the hall into the main floor, where she ricochets his body right off a pillar, slicing the other pillars around her and kicking them into Sukuna, who hits a Michael Jackson pose for some reason before grabbing Maki's face and throwing her straight out of the building. This leads to them landing on another part of the bridge, with Sukuna beginning an insane speech about how Maki's sole existence denies Jujutsu. He runs in, swinging right, which she barely holds back with her sword. He grabs it, like he really likes to do this. and hitting her with a black flash straight to the gut, launching her into the building, knocking her out of the fight temporarily, leaving the only person left to fight him being Kusakabe. See, even now that doesn't sound right. The clash begins with Kusakabe opening new shadow style, Simple Domain Evening Moon Swords Sei, which let's break down what this does. You see, a regular Simple Domain creates a small area of effect to negate the effects of a curse technique / domain. But there are variations of Simple Domain that allow the user to change the zone's effect through binding vows, like Miwa, which allows her to react to anything that enters her Simple Domain instantly if both her feet are firmly planted on the ground. Kusakabe's has a similar effect, but it's far more advanced and doesn't require a binding vow like Miwa's does. Sukuna takes the first move, sending off a few slashes, which Kusakabe continuously reacts to them. He continues to do this until Sukuna initiates that he's about to send off the world-cutting slash. Though to prevent this, Kusakabe expands the Simple Domain, allowing him to move in quickly and slash up Sukuna several times, shocking him completely. But his sword breaks from overusage, so Kusakabe blinds him with his jacket, punching him in the face and parrying all of Sukuna's counter attempts. When he tries to escape by using a dismantle, Kusakabe moves down and hits him with a high kick, sending him flying through the bridge behind them. Catching up to him, he hits several jabs to the gut and dodges Sukuna's retaliating dismantles. Then using new shadow style Moon Haze, rematerializing his sword with cursed energy and goes straight for Sukuna's damaged heart. But Sukuna, hitting the same grab again, I know he plays Ness in Super Smash Bros. At this point. With Kusakabe being out of options, Sukuna cuts him straight across the chest, ending his performance for this arc. So let's come back to our trusty tier list and review his overall performance. Well, he was essential to coming up with some of the plans to beat Sukuna and played his own part on the battlefield, with him not only saving Higuruma, but also helping out Maki in her fight. Not to mention stalling Sukuna by himself while waiting for the others to recover. So based off what potential most of us thought he had going into this fight, I think it's safe to say to put him in an S, since he went above and beyond almost everyone's expectations for him multiple times. Ryu arrives back on the battlefield to save Kusakabe, but this time Sukuna isn't in the mood to let it happen, so he attempts to cut him down. But at the last moment, someone arrives to save him, and he's saved by Miguel and Lahu. When I tell you this had everyone shocked for a whole week, I'm not joking. When I first saw this, I thought it was fake. But nope, Lahu and Miguel have really arrived to help fight the next round against Sukuna. The fight starts with Sukuna cutting down the front of the building, charging in, going for Lahu first to activate his curse technique, which is a large hand he controls that can grasp his opponents physically and mentally. He also only takes 1/5 of the damage that is done to the hand. He pushes Sukuna back, first cuts the hand and then cuts Lahu himself. But Miguel takes his turn against Sukuna, who sends waves of dismantles after him, dodging every single one of them, and dodging Sukuna's kick, which sends debris up at Lahu, who uses his hand to move out of the way. This is where we learn about Miguel's technique, Prayer Song, where if he follows a certain rhythm during a fight, he buffs himself and then debuffs his opponent. He uses this against Sukuna by getting into the rhythm and then moving in close, grabbing his low right and parries high left, landing a clean shot to the gut. As Choso returns to the fight, trying to hit Sukuna with another piercing blood, though he notices first, dodging it and returning the favor with 2 dismantles to the chest. Yet the pressure doesn't stop there, and Yuji comes crashing through the skylight. Then out of nowhere, Maki returns to the fight as well, cutting Sukuna's low left arm off, meaning he now is unable to do world-cutting slash, since he needs to be able to make the Malevolent Shrine hand sign to do it. And just when it seems like all the pieces have fallen into place, Sukuna turns around and hits Lahu straight in the gut with a black flash. And don't forget, after a sorcerer lands 2 black flashes, they regain their cursed energy output, so Sukuna can now begin to start healing. Not giving him a chance to heal though, Maki moves behind him, going for Sukuna's back, but he parries it, so Choso kicks up the railing and Yuji uses it to pin him. Choso then goes for his 4th piercing blood, which he also misses. This time I don't blame him though, I don't even know how he got out of this. Sukuna then tries to create some distance between them, though Maki manages to keep up with him, going for a stab to the chest, which he does the same thing for the 3rd time in the video and grabs the sword before it reaches his heart. Then they proceed to clash repeatedly in the sky before Sukuna winds up his fist and hits Maki with a 2nd black flash, finishing her off with a twin dismantle to the chest. Choso comes in with a supernova though, preventing Sukuna from killing her, but he is outpaced, getting slammed into a wall and getting hit with the 4th black flash of the fight. However, he uses his blood to harden Sukuna's fist in place so Yuji can rock him in the face. As he recoils from the punch, Choso hands Yuji something, but we don't quite get to see it, and as he moves in, Yuji and Sukuna go at it by themselves for a while, with Yuji grabbing his head as Sukuna nicks him in the side with a right. Then he grabs Yuji's chest for like the 4th goddamn time. This time though, Yuji puts him in leg lock and charging up a piercing blood. I still remember seeing this and having all that foreshadowing finally pay off, so everyone could finally shut up about Yuji not having a technique. He gained the technique from devouring the rest of the cursed rooms, and since he essentially became a cursed object himself after having been Sukuna's vessel, he developed the blood manipulation technique. I wonder if that could happen to anything else he ate. Sukuna does dodge it, but barely though, as he's forced to let go of Yuji, who then begins to set up for a black flash. Though as Sukuna attempts to move out of the way, his attention is grabbed by Lu Hu's technique, making him unable to take his attention away from Lu Hu due to previously being in his grasp. As Yuji comes in, hitting his first black flash of the fight, finally beginning to awaken. And that's where we will leave off for today. But first, we have 2 more sorcerers who had their full performances in this video, Miguel and Lu Hu. Now Miguel really only hit this one punch on Sukuna and then fucked off for the rest of the fight, but Lu Hu helped Yuji land his black flash, which will be critical in the next round against Sukuna. So let's put Lu Hu in C and Miguel in D, since this tier list is based off of the potential they had in this fight, and we didn't even know they were going to beat in this fight. The fight starts with both of them facing off, and Sukuna makes the first move, going in for a grab. But Yuji parries, checking him in the gut, and let's get that black flash counter up on the screen. Remember, we have 1 from last time, so that makes this the second black flash of the fight. Attempting to cover, Sukuna goes for a low with his upper right hand, but Yuji parries that, hitting number 3 off of it. Though Sukuna comes in again with his upper right this time, pushing Yuji off the level they're on, but Yuji grabs the column behind him and uses cleave. This had people losing their minds. You see, we had foreshadowing about this way back in the first few chapters of the series, and then we got another piece of it when Yuji fought Sukuna in the Calling Games, where he left a cut on Sukuna's finger. But that also could be a hint to soul damaging power, so take your pick with that one. Anyways, how Yuji's shrine separates itself from Sukuna's is that when he grabs something to use cleave on it, instead of leaving those line marks that Sukuna's does, it creates scissors showing where the cut will be made. After Yuji uses cleave on the pillar behind him, he throws it at Sukuna, who cuts it up and tries to hit him with a kick through the rubble. But Yuji reaches through, grabs his leg, applying cleave to it, though to prevent it from happening, Sukuna sends off some dismantles, but Yuji tanks them, coming in with number 4 straight to Sukuna's right side. He tries to create some distance, but Ino comes back to the fight, launching off beast number 4, a dragon Shikigami named Ryu, which knocks Sukuna into the wall. Well, Ino moves in, trying to get him with Nanami's cleave, but Sukuna stops it with his foot, though it was enough of a distraction to get him with number 5, which he is just able to block, though it still launches him backwards, where he uses cleave to destroy the floor, dropping them into the sewer. Sukuna charges in, trying to get Yuji with a right, but he puts him in an arm lock and sends him straight into the wall. Sukuna with number 6. He attempts to retaliate with a slash to the face, but Yuji just pulls his face back and hits number 7, right to the face. Sukuna, now enraged, tries to move in, but is hit by Nanami's cleave straight to the face, which Ino threw to help one last time, as Yuji hits number 8, right to his back, sending him all the way up to the next floor. Now this is going to take some time to explain. So since Sukuna was able to get off 2 black flashes, he allowed his generation to focus on the parts of his brain that were damaged by Unlimited Void. Though, due to Yuji's black flash combo, it prevented him from fully recovering. So he made a binding vow that would allow him to summon his domain, but with a reduced area of effect and damage output. This limited domain, though, was still large enough to attack all the remaining sorcerers from Jujutsu High. However, luckily they each had learned Simple Domain from Kusakabe. Well, except Maki, since she has no cursed energy, who is saved by Miwa. I wonder how Miwa got here, since Wiwi isn't there. I wonder who else has a technique that can teleport people. Also, here's where the performance for 3 sorcerers end. These 3 being Miwa, Maki, and Ino. First up is Miwa, since she had the shortest performance. All she did was come in and use Simple Domain to save Miwa. But that's still more than Momo, so she gets an E. Now, Ino outperformed all expectations for him, helping Higuruma and Maki in their fights respectively, and helping Yuji land 2 different black flashes on Sukuna. So for him, I think it's a well-deserved beat. Now with Maki, she definitely did what was expected of her, stabbing Sukuna through his heart, and was able to go 2 separate rounds against him, but honestly, her allowing Sukuna to get off 2 black flashes is not a good look. So I'd say with her performance, she's an A, doing what she could, but just missing out from totally surpassing everyone's expectations. Heading back to the fight, Yuji is able to withstand Sukuna's domain, but when he returns his eyes to him, he'd begun to charge up a fire arrow. Now how the fire arrow works is after Sukuna used his curse technique enough to warm up his jujutsu, he's able to create the arrow. But due to the arrow's lack of range, he placed a binding vow on it, which if he fills the condition of not being outnumbered in his own domain, the arrow's range will be the entire domain itself. As he fired it off, it seemed to be the end of Yuji, but at the last moment, Choso comes in, expelling all the blood from his body to cover Yuji from the attack, but as a result, he takes the full force of the attack, turning to ash after he saved his little brother. Now, Choso's overall performance in the arc was meh. He was basically always the distraction to help others. However, he did save both Maki, Higuruma, and at the end, he saved Yuji. Though I would have liked to see him go hand to hand against Sukuna with the rest of the team a little more. He did serve his purpose, so that's a C for Choso, since he did as well as everyone expected him to do. Back to the fight, as the smoke cleared, the only ones left on the battlefield were Sukuna and Yuji. But before Yuji's resolve could totally shatter against the King of Curses, someone else emerges from the smoke. We haven't seen in over 100 chapters, with Todo making his grand return to the manga, helping Yuji rebuild his resolve by revealing he had used Boogie Woogie to swap with Mei's crows and bring them all to safety as the next round against Sukuna begins. But before the start of it, Todo reveals his new hand, a Viber Slap. This allows him to swap anything with cursed energy every time his new hand rattles, accumulating to 50 swaps a second. The fight starts with Todo swapping them around as Yuji goes low with a punch and Todo goes high with a kick to the jaw. Swapping in the air, he attempts to kick him, but Sukuna dodges him in midair, though Yuji comes in, throwing a rock infused with cursed energy that Todo swaps him with, kicking Sukuna in the gut and into a building. He recovers though, palming Yuji and attempting to throw him, but before he can do anything, Todo swaps Yuji in Sukuna's place, who hits a straight right to his spine, tossing him into the pillar that was going to be meant for him. Sukuna could tell they were about to set up for a feint, as he created some distance, but instead of going for the feint, one of Mei's crows comes in, and Sukuna goes for a kick on it, thinking that the next move was to swap Yuji with the crow, but it was all a setup, and Todo ended up swapping no one at all, letting Yuji land Black Flash number 9 straight to his gut, attempting to rip his heart out, but Sukuna begins to open his restricted domain, attempting to finish the fight here and now. However, someone else arrives to join in, someone he's already beaten, and here is where we will end it for today. Picks up right where it left off, with a new unknown fighter entering the ring, and it's revealed to be Gojo. No, Kenjaku. Yuta? Okay, well, let's explain this first. You see, Yuta's curse technique allows him to use other sorcerer's techniques if Rika eats a part of the sorcerer, but if the sorcerer was to heal the damage they took, Yuta would lose the ability. So, he had Rika devour Kenjaku so he could take his technique and possess Gojo's body, allowing him to use the Six Eyes and Gojo's techniques, though unable to use his own. However, he can only use this body until he burns out his cursed energy, using Kenjaku's technique, since he doesn't possess the same knowledge of the technique that Kenjaku did, and doesn't know how to sustain it. Gota, we'll call him, starts the fight by popping a domain expansion, and Sukuna counters by slapping Yuji away and popping his own domain expansion. As they clash, the fight begins inside, with Gota pulling Sukuna in with a blue. However, he predicts this setup, moving in and moving his hand down, jabbing him in the face several times. But Gota is able to recover, dodges his next jab, grabbing it and throwing Sukuna to the ground, kicking him. Then he moves in and palms Sukuna in the back of the head, barely dodging Sukuna's recovery punch. Though Sukuna notices he isn't used to Gojo's body and goes for a kick, which Gota is barely able to move away from it, gaining distance as he tries to fire off a red. Though it misfires and Sukuna moves in and rocks him with a right, Gota steps back and attempts to launch a purple, but as he recites the chants, Sukuna moves in, breaking his arms apart, stopping him from doing the sign, and punching him, throwing him into his domain. However, Gota uses blue to pull something into the domain, a recorder. It plays a recording of Inumaki's voice, relaying the command to stop, as Gota launches a purple straight at Sukuna. However, the purple was incomplete and ended up destroying Sukuna's domain and Goto's barrier. With it, as they both move back, they both suffer technique burnout, with Goto collapsing as Yuji and Todo run in. Okay, we have two sorcerers to grade based on their performance. First, we have Inumaki. His only contribution were letting Yuta land the purple and training him in curse speech. So, his performance is similar to someone like Miwa, with him doing a bit more, so we'll put him in D. Now Yuta is just an S. Like, what can I say? He had the plans, the fights, almost sacrificed being able to return to his body, and taking out Kenjaku at the beginning of the arc. So yeah, easy S. As Todo and Yuji charged in, Sukuna caught Todo off guard and hit him with a black flash, breaking his Vibra Slap. With Yuji moving in and Todo bashing the Vibra Slap against his own head, swapping Yuji with the shards of Goto's domain, which are pure cursed energy. Yuji lands a hard left to Sukuna's face as Todo starts another swap, having Yuji switch with the domain shards around Sukuna before stopping him, letting Yuji hit Sukuna with a dismantle straight to the back. Now, how Yuji's dismantles differ from Sukuna's is that instead of flying slashes, it's a contact-related hit that cuts the barrier of the soul. But Yuji used a binding vow to switch it to the barrier between souls, allowing him to cut the connection between Megumi and Sukuna's soul. This attack was so powerful, it caused Sukuna to cough up his own fingers, slowly using his dominance over Megumi's soul. He swallows them though as Yuji moves in, destroying the pillar Sukuna stands on, going for a left, but Sukuna dodges him, punching him into the wall. Todo sets up for his next switch, however, it ends up switching neither him, Yuji, or Sukuna. Instead, it brings out Hana into the battlefield, who launches a maximum output Jacob's Ladder, which could completely remove Sukuna from Megumi's body. As it comes crashing down, Sukuna punches the ground, sending debris flying up the ladder, as he uses it to literally climb Jacob's Ladder and catch up to Hana. He winds his fist back to hit her, but Todo runs in and takes the blow for her. Sukuna lands his second Black Flash, now having the chance to regain his RCT output. Now we have another two performances to grade, first being Hana. Now with Todo, he saved both Ino and Maki from Sukuna's domain and helped Yuji in his fight against Sukuna, not to mention saving Hana at the end and helping Yuta get the jump on Kenjaku. So I'd say overall, he's an A, since clutching is basically Todo's purpose. Back to the fight, Yuji followed Sukuna up the ladder and delivers a punch to his face, grabs his legs and slamming him down a building. He tries to hit him with another dismantle, but Sukuna flips out of the way and sends a few of his own dismantles at him that Yuji dodges. But he's surprised by Sukuna's regenerated arms as he's rocked in the face. Yuji tries to regain his footing, but Sukuna grabs his arm and punches him in the gut and face and ends the combo with a knee to the face. Yuji flips back and uses a cleave on the floor, causing Sukuna to lose his footing as Yuji moves in, but he still dodges it, grabbing Yuji's hoodie and jabbing him in the face. But as Sukuna mockingly thinks Yuji won't land another dismantle, Yuji steps back and says the two words we were waiting the entire series to hear. Domain expansion. Favorite moment in Shinjuku Showdown, by the way. Now, I won't be covering chapter 265 due to it not really needing an analysis, but to anyone who's read the series, I would really recommend going back to read it, because the words spoken between the two characters in this chapter is some of the best writing Gege has ever had, and it's my personal favorite chapter in the entire series. Now let's try and explain Yuji's domain. Yuji's domain itself is unnamed, but we can figure out some things about it. The domain itself seems to swap between everywhere Yuji has been in his life, giving him the advantage and making his opponent struggle to keep up with the changing environment. And as for its sure hit effect, it seems that it has the ability to allow Yuji to land his soul dismantles without his punches landing themselves. Now let's return to the fight, where Sukuna opens Hollow Wicker Basket while they walk down each other. Sukuna makes the first move, going for a kick, but Yuji grabs and delivers a chop to it. Though Sukuna uses his leg to lock Yuji, throws him to the ground and hits him with a jab to the face and then a hard right, sending him back. But Megumi's soul begins to fight back against Sukuna, making him fall into his own shadow, while Yuji charges in and returns the hard right he just got hit by. Yuji then charges in, hitting Sukuna with a barrage of punches, and they both grab each other, going blow for blow with the CTE they're gonna have after this. finishing it off with a blow to the head. But Sukuna, knowing he's backed against a wall, takes a trick out of Gojo's bag, refreshing his burnt out curse technique by breaking down his brain and rebuilding it with RCT, allowing him to regain his domain. He sends slashes at Yuji to create some distance between them, shredding one of Yuji's gauntlets. But as it peeled off, it's revealed that Yuji was missing 2 fingers. The first being from when Sukuna used Yuji's pinky to swap bodies with Megumi. What was the second for? Well, remember when I said way back in round 2 to remember how weird it was that Yuta explained how he got Sukuna's technique? Well, that was set up for this moment, where he actually fed Rika Yuji's finger to give him the technique instead of Sukuna's, so they'd have the last finger as a last resort. Now you might be thinking, what's the purpose of this last resort? The purpose of this last resort is getting hit by Nobara's residence. Now, how Nobara's technique works is if she has a part of a person and places it on one of her straw dolls, striking it with a nail, it delivers a direct strike to whoever body part she made contact with, and it bypasses defense. As she hits this attack, Yuji is able to move in, and Yuji is finally able to land his sure hit attack. As this mantle lands on Sukuna's chest, Yuji runs in and jabs him in the face, making him spit out his own fingers. But Sukuna returns the favor, gut-checking Yuji as they stand off for the final time. Both of them begin to go for the head, but Yuji outplayed him, hitting him with a delayed double impact, a divergent fist. And he comes in with number 10, straight to Sukuna's gut, shattering his connection with Megumi. As Sukuna disappears on the ground, he and Yuji speak one last time, with Sukuna acknowledging him before fading away, ending Shinjuku Showdown. But first, let's go over these last few sorcerers' performances. First is Yuji. He's an S. You can't really say much, he literally won the fight. Next we have Nobara. Similar to characters like Miwa and Inumaki, she helped out with one play, so we'll grade her similarly, so I'd say it's a D for Nobara. Next we have Meimei. She helped with Todo's swapping in Sukuna's domain, which distracted him twice, so let's give her a C. Kirara really only appeared once to make sure Kusakabe was recovered safely, and even then I don't think they needed her, so let's say E. Now with Megumi, lastly we have Wee, who really showed up, saving several people and helped in the training. So honestly, I think he's an A. And with that, the series comes to an end. I hope you all enjoyed my first ever video series, and I'll be releasing a video compiling all of them into one video if you ever want to rewatch it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.